everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the final DNFs of 2024 that I have. I have 10 books to talk about. I have been doing kind of seasonal DNF videos talking about all the books I put down, gave up on, quit for one reason or another. I'm a liberal, I've said this probably in every one of my DNF videos, I'm a liberal DNFer. I will put a book down for the pettiest reasons. I will put down a book at 90% if it's bothering me in some way. I am contemplating whether or not to do a follow-up video and read 2 or 3 of these books I gave up on, giving them a second chance, but you guys let me know which ones you'd be interested in me picking up and possibly following through with. Let's get into the 10 books I gave up in the last, 3 months of the year or so. The first being The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I was 75% of the way through this book and decided to give it up. I have a whole video vlogging reading this book if you're interested in all of my thoughts and feelings, but ultimately I was bored. I was bored by this story. I thought it was way too dragged out personally, and I found myself only caring about one plot line, and even the level of care I had for that one plot line was sort of middling, if not, very small. So I put it down, and I just think Robin Hobb isn't an author for me, sadly. I would love to read, the epic realm of the Elderlings saga, but it's just not meant to be for me. A romance that I gave up on was romance? Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I was 20% into this one, and I realized I hated the main man, the leading lad, if you will. His name is Nick, and he's awful. I hated him. And this also followed so many points of view outside of the main couple that I was just really struggling to be grounded in the story and this romance. And I wasn't even rooting for the romance to begin with because I hated Nick. So I gave up on this one at 20%. This one saddens me. We're talking The Seventh Veil of Salome by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is a historical fiction about a movie production of the biblical story of Salome, and we also get flashbacks to Salome, the real person, throughout the story, and the present timeline is following 2 women kind of vying for the same role in the film adaptation. And that sounds, in theory, like it would be interesting. Silvia Moreno Garcia has a lot to say about women, unlikable women, historical figures that have been wronged, the movie and the film industry, all things that I think are solidly in her wheelhouse of themes that she would be excellent at dissecting. However, I don't like historical fiction. If this had some slight fantastical element, even if it was magical realism, I would consider picking this back up, but I was reading it and I just wasn't drawn in, and I knew there wasn't going to be any fantasy in it. So I decided to give this one up, and I was only like 5% in, but I just don't like historicals, and I didn't want to give Silvia Moreno Garcia a low rating, to be honest, which is maybe a dumb reason to put a book down, but I wasn't going to push through for something I knew I wasn't going to like. Then we have Ink Blood Sisters Scribe by Emma Torres. This, I was 30% of the way through, and I was bored. This is about, the synopsis and what this is actually about are 2 different things. So it's sold as this like family saga about these 2 estranged sisters coming back to their magical house to protect the kind of magical library that their family is the caretaker for. And there's some secrets wrapped up in that, obviously. And so I was really excited to read that, but at 30%, the 2 siblings were still separated by quite a distance. They were still in their separate, world spheres or whatever, and I was just finding the pace to get these two back together really slow and slogging. And there are other points of view included in the story, and I hated those points of view. So I was bored, I wasn't liking certain points of view, and decided to give it up. A quick and easy one is Carol by Patricia Highsmith, or this is also, the original title of this is The Price of Salt. I was 12% and I was so bored. This is the driest of dry romances, historical romances. Technically, it's contemporary for the time in which it was written, but I think that was like the 60s. So I was bored. I did not like this. This is one of the first, if not the first, Sapphic published Sapphic novels featuring a happy ever after. So I appreciate this book for what it did for publishing queer stories. However, I was bored to tears. Now this next one I have very strong opinions about. Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I've been hearing Julie Soto quite a bit in the bookish sphere about people loving her. Currently she has 2 romances out and people loving them. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll give this a try, and I ended up giving up on this one 20% in. The opening scene of this book is our wedding planner main character, Emma. Our main character, Emma, is a wedding planner, and she basically convinces a bride to follow through with a wedding that the bride is like having second thoughts about. And that scene just gave me the ick really badly about Emma, and it kind of stuck with me for the 20% of the book that I read. Her reasoning was basically like, well, the wedding day doesn't matter. Marriage doesn't really matter because you can always get divorced and married again. I was like, I really didn't like that. I kept going just to see if it would get better, and then we met Elliot, who's the guy, and he was an ass. So I was like, I already had a bad taste in my mouth, and he was an ass, so I decided to skip this one. Sadly, I'm more sad about this one. Hawaii's Story by Hawaii's Queen. This is a memoir story written by Hawaii's last queen. I think this book is culturally and historically significant. However, it is not fun to read. It was dry and boring, and I just couldn't get into the writing. It was written in the 1800s, and I feel bad, but like, I just like reading modern stuff, modern texts for the most part. I found this one kind of inaccessible in terms of like the language use, and I just was bored. I'm so sorry. I think we should give Hawaii back, by the way. Like, let's not mince words. Hawaii was, I know the history of Hawaii in general and have feelings about it. So it's not like I needed to be convinced of the need for Hawaiian sovereignty, but this is just a book I couldn't finish, couldn't get into, sadly. Then we have Cecilia by Franny Burney. This predates Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen was actually inspired by Cecilia, which is a sweeping romance. And talk about inaccessible. This is a 1,000-page book. First and foremost, this is 1,000 pages, and you know, bonkers. And you can tell that it was written serialized, not as a novel, if that makes sense. You can tell it was, every chapter was released in the newspaper in serial format, because it just like, it goes on and on and on, and things feel disjointed, versus you know, like Pride and Prejudice, which was written as a novel, as a cohesive narrative, as a chunk, you know? And I think you can tell, and I really was not jiving with this, the writing, the structure of it, anything. I was only like 2% in, like, but I didn't know who our character was. I was just completely baffled. And again, I just think I prefer more modern language and text. I just do. I'm also really sad about this one. We have Those Who Wait by Haley Cass. Now, Haley Cass has written 3 5-star books for me. 2 were full 5 stars. 1 was like a 4.25, 4.5. And this was the next book on my list to read by this author, and I was really disappointed by it. I was 30% in. It's quite a long, slow burn romance. This is about 2 women who basically want different things. We have a woman named Sutton, and she wants to marry, or she wants to date for love, for emotional connection, for finding a forever person. And Charlotte is a politician and wants to keep people at a distance kind of because of it. And so she only wants short-term flings, one-night stands, no emotional connection in terms of relationships. And so these 2 end up becoming friends because they're like, well, obviously we're incompatible, but we like each other and we're attracted to each other, so let's be friends. And they end up forming this friendship, and there's obviously chemistry between them. And then 30% of the book, we get a sexual encounter where Sutton goes to Charlotte and says, let's get down to business, if you know what I mean. And that whole scene just, again, gave me the ick. It made me uncomfortable. I thought there was a weird amount of compromise that Sutton had to go through to get to that point. I feel like she was just kind of bent to Charlotte's will because that's what Charlotte wants. Charlotte just wants this physical connection with no emotional connection, and I feel like Sutton just kind of gave in at that point. So it kind of, to me, even though it wasn't, it felt like there was like a weird power imbalance in the scene. Charlotte was holding back because she just wanted to give Sutton what Sutton said she wanted, but Sutton took that holding back as rejection, and so now everyone's feelings was hurt by the encounter, even though Charlotte is, you know, very attracted to Sutton and wants her very badly. But instead of using her words, neither of these women actually spoke what they actually wanted. And I think nothing is sexier, in my opinion, than being open and honest with your romantic and or sexual partner, especially in the bedroom and before the bedroom and after the bedroom. You know what I mean? And so I just couldn't get behind it, and it just made me really uncomfortable, and I didn't like it, and I couldn't see myself rooting for these 2 after that. I think this author could have pulled it off, but I was just so uncomfortable by the scene that I wanted to move on. The last book I have to talk about is a DNF for now, which means I put this book down, but with the intention of picking it back up. Engines of Empire by R.S. Ford, or Richard Ford. This is an epic, multi-point of view, high fantasy, kind of having to do with guilds and guild families. And we're following one particular guild family. We're following, I think they're called the Hawkspurs. We're following the matriarch and the 3 children of this family, and kind of political stuff is going on. Machinations are happening. And I was actually really enjoying this. But I will be completely honest with you. I read half of this book and I was barely paying attention. And so I got halfway through and I was like, okay, I'm interested in what I remember, but I wasn't like retaining things. So I wanted to go back and start over and give this book more attention. But then the new Brandon Sanderson book came out, Wind and Truth, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this book a second chance after I finish the 1,400 page Stormlight Archive book, because I can only hold so much space in my brain for epic high fantasy, especially books that I want to pay close attention to, and I want to do that for both Stormlight and getting back into Engines of Empire. I will say, there was one particular storyline, one particular point of view from Engines of Empire that I was like really invested in, despite my lack of attention. So like, I know this author has good stuff and I will probably love this. I just need to focus. Those are the 10 books I DNF'd or did not finish in the last 3 or 4 months, and I will probably continue to DNF in 2025. Let me know if you liked the seasonal version of this video. In 2023, I just did a huge DNF video at the end of the year with everything I DNF'd, and it was kind of long. So that's why I decided to break it up in 2024. But do you prefer one video with everything, or multiple like quarterly or seasonal style videos? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around to the end, you're a real one, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye!